Trump is a believer in tariffs, although for several different reasons that might not all quite work out. One, as you say, is because he thinks that they can replace income tax. Another one is that they can basically promote lots of manufacturing in the US. But the two of those, for example, aren't really compatible, because if there's no imports, there wouldn't be any tariff income. Therefore, you'd have to have taxes, which is implied by making everything in the US. Or you have lots of tariff income, in which case you're not actually promoting manufacturing in the US.
So tell me exactly what President Trump is saying, and what does it mean for the UK?
President Trump is saying that trade is systematically biased against the US and that he's going to take action. He's going to put in place fair and reciprocal tariffs against this. Some of the ways in which trade is unfair is countries that have VAT, like the UK, countries that have rules and regulations that keep US products out, countries that tax the US unfairly, like digital services tax, countries that have higher tariffs, and pretty much anything really is game. But the overall idea is tariffs must rise because the US is being treated unfairly by the rest of the world.
And so let's say he goes ahead and imposes these tariffs. Have people sort of estimated what the impact it could have on the UK economy?
It will be a negative impact on the UK economy if the tariffs go ahead. We won't be as hard hit as others. It's really difficult to model precisely what he means because it's not entirely clear what the numbers would be. So the UK has VAT. Does that mean, I don't know, all UK tariffs go up by 10% on products going to the US? Hard to tell, but it's certainly a negative impact if there are tariffs on the UK. Though curiously enough, or maybe not, if you follow these things, the biggest impact is on the US itself. There's huge amounts of uncertainty if you're trying to run a business in the US that's involved in importing or exporting anything.
So what would the impact on the US be? You mean that US exporters would suddenly find that they or rather, people who import stuff from the UK for their business would suddenly find their costs going up, and then US exporters would also presumably be hit by reciprocal tariffs.
In both ways round, and many exporters are in fact also importers. That's the way modern supply chains work. So if the example I often give is Boeing planes. They're sourcing inputs from various places. They may include Rolls-Royce engines. If they have to pay more for the Rolls-Royce engines, then the cost of the plane is going to go up when they try to sell it around the world. And Airbus presumably is then better off than when it doesn't have to have anything to do with the US. So that, by the way, is one of the reasons why this may not happen, is that a large number of American companies are already lobbying and saying this will make us all completely uncompetitive in the world.
So let's unpack this a bit, because the thing about President Trump is, however kind of extreme his position is, there's always a kernel of truth. And does he have a point? For example, I think he said that 48 US states can't export their agricultural products to Europe. Europe notoriously has very tough rules on food imports. For example, we all know about chlorinated chicken. Does he have a point in saying, you've got to relax a few of these rules? They're completely unfair and one-sided.
Not really, no, because all countries have their own import rules, and try exporting haggis to the US. Well, you won't be able to because it's illegal in the US for no particularly good reason. So you then get into an argument about whether the US has harder basically harsher standards for goods coming into the US than the US goods face going outwards. Well, you can argue about that sort of stuff for years on end without actually reaching any kind of conclusion. So you can pick individual products where the US is struggling to sell them in other countries, but then you could equally pick products the other way around. So no, there's not much of a point to that, and that's not why the US is not exporting so much food and drink produce, for example.
But it's, you used the phrase years on end. Is there a chance that this might concentrate minds? Could we in 6 months see tons of haggis going to the US following an intense trade negotiation?
At the moment, I think most countries are playing a bit of wait and see, really. What does this actually mean? I think it's probably too early to even start talks. I suspect there'll be lots of soundings being taken in the US to try and find out what's going to happen. There's also a part of this order that says, I want to do deals as well. So there'll certainly be countries that are thinking, okay, what will it take to do a deal and just to end all of this and actually get a settled position. But I think we need to see more from the U.S. administration as to its intent before anybody can really go and do that, because no country that has a VAT system is suddenly going to dismantle that in order to do a trade deal with the US. That's just not realistic. So it really depends. Is this to be taken literally? If it's to be taken literally, I think it's very hard to do any deals with the US. Or is this just a kind of another wave of Trump saying, do things on my terms and I'll let you know what those terms are later?
And there's another argument, isn't there, that I think sits inside President Trump's head, which is, and it may well be mythical, this sort of view that in the sort of 19th century countries could survive on tariffs, that he could almost replace things like income tax with tariff income if he sets them at the right level and high enough.
That's certainly a part of this, that Trump is a believer in tariffs, although for several different reasons that might not all quite work out. One, as you say, is because he thinks that they can replace income tax. Another one is that they can basically promote lots of manufacturing in the US. But the two of those, for example, aren't really compatible, because if there's no imports, there wouldn't be any tariff income. Therefore, you'd have to have taxes, which is implied by making everything in the US. Or you have lots of tariff income, in which case you're not actually promoting manufacturing in the US. So again, it's a jumble of things that Trump is bringing to the table. Trump and a couple of particular advisors. There's a guy called Peter Navarro who's behind a lot of that. It's a real jumble of things that is impossible to satisfactorily kind of dismantle from each other. And so we just end up with a confusion at the moment. This is only week 3. This is the second tariff announcement of week 3, the first one being steel and aluminium. Week 4 could bring several more, and they may be slightly contradictory to what we've seen this week.
We know that jobs are going to be produced at levels that we haven't seen before. We know that we think interest rates are going to ultimately be coming down because of things that happen, and they go hand in hand with the tariffs. But we think that the prices for some things, many things, it could be all things, will go down. Ultimately, will go down. Mr. President. They haven't been treated as good. You know, we think the European Union is wonderful. We all love Europe, love the countries in Europe, but European Union has been absolutely brutal on trade. Canada has been very bad to us on trade, but now Canada is going to have to start paying up. And Canada has been tough on the military because they have a very low military cost. They think we're going to, protect them with our military, which is unfair. So Canada is going to be a very interesting situation. China and other places, we want to get the pharmaceutical and drug business back into the United States, where it should be. Yet they survive off the fact that we do 95% of what they do. And Canada is just absolutely, I say it, and sometimes people smile and sometimes they say, great idea, but Canada, their taxes would come down greatly, their security would go up greatly. Amazing things happen to Canada, and really Canada in this particular, why would we pay $200 billion a year in subsidies to Canada when they're not a state? You do that for a state, but you don't do that for somebody else's country. So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state. But India is a very hard place to do business in because of the tariffs. They have the highest tariffs just about in the world, and it's a hard place to do business. No, I would imagine I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens. But it just sets up so good for them. Look, the people would pay much less tax than they're paying right now. They'd have perfect military protection. They don't have any military protection because and you take a look at what's going on out there. You have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have Chinese ships, you have a lot of ships out there, and people are in danger. This is a different world today. It's a different world. They need our protection. Yes. I have a big heart.
Sir, on Ukraine, when